Namaskar viewers, hello and welcome to Sansad TV. I am Teena Jha, you are watching Perspective. Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Wednesday embarked on an 8-day diplomatic tour covering 5 nations across Africa, Latin America and the Caribbean. Starting from Ghana, the Prime Minister will head to the Caribbean nation of Trinidad and Tobago and then to Argentina, from where he'll travel to Brazil to attend the 17th BRICS 2025 summit and then finally to Namibia for the last leg of the tour. This will mark the longest diplomatic visit by the Prime Minister in nearly 10 years. The last 5-nation tour that Prime Minister Modi undertook was in 2016 when he visited the United States, Mexico, Switzerland, Afghanistan and Qatar. In his departure statement, the Prime Minister said that this tour will reinforce India's partnerships across the global south, enhance its footprint on multilateral platforms and foster ties across both sides of the Atlantic. The Prime Minister also shared his schedule from the 2nd July to the 9th of July. His 2-day visit to Ghana comes at the invitation of President John Dramani Mahama. This also happens to be Prime Minister's first visit to Ghana since assuming office in 2014. Furthermore, this visit also marks the first by an Indian Prime Minister in 30 years. In addition to bilateral exchanges, the Prime Minister will back the creation of a vaccine hub and also address the Parliament of Ghana. On the 3rd and 4th of July, the Prime Minister will be in the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, a country with which India shares deep-rooted historical, cultural and people-to-people connect. Indians first arrived in this country 180 years ago, so this visit of the Prime Minister to the country will mark the first visit by an Indian Prime Minister in 25 years. In the 3rd stop of the tour, the Prime Minister will visit Argentina, marking the first bilateral visit by an Indian Prime Minister to the country in 57 years. Prime Minister Modi will engage with President Rajya to discuss partnerships in agriculture, trade, technology and critical minerals. After Argentina, the Prime Minister will head to Brazil for the BRICS 2025 summit in Rio de Janeiro on the 6th and 7th of July. This visit will also mark the 4th time Prime Minister Modi has visited Brazil. Also on the sidelines of the summit, the Prime Minister will meet several world leaders. The final leg of the tour will take place in Namibia, which will also mark the first visit by an Indian Prime Minister to the country in 27 years. So the significance of this visit, what's on the agenda and how it will reinforce India's partnerships across the global south, that's what we're going to focus on in Perspective today. I'm delighted to welcome 2 distinguished guests on the program. With me in the studio is former Ambassador Virendra Gupta, a career diplomat who served as India's High Commissioner in Tanzania, Trinidad and Tobago and also South Africa. Ambassador, delighted to have you with us on this edition of Perspective. Welcome to Sansad TV. Joining us virtually is Dr. Ajay Kumar Dubey, Professor, Center for African Studies, School of International Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University. Professor, glad to have you with us on this broadcast as well.
Thank you.
So together with the 2 of you, we'll try and understand the significance of this visit of the Prime Minister across 5 countries. We'll discuss each phase of the Prime Minister's 5-nation visit over the next 8 days. But to begin with, Ambassador, help us and our viewers understand both the diplomatic and the strategic significance of Prime Minister Modi choosing these 5 specific nations for his longest diplomatic tour in nearly 10 years.
Look, for any country, summit-level visits by Prime Minister are the highest form of diplomatic engagement. And the fact that Prime Minister is taking a visit of 10 days at a stretch goes to show that the kind of energy that he can bring onto his job.
Right.
This is incredible and without any precedence. Countries have been chosen very carefully, I would say. Firstly, it shows continuing focus of India and particularly Prime Minister Modi on Africa. Africa, we have a traditional connect and we have centuries of connect with Africa. But what had happened before Prime Minister Modi's arrival on the scene is that we were not giving adequate attention to Africa. Right. We were not undertaking adequate number of high-level visits. And I think Prime Minister Modi was clearly intent on correcting that anomaly. and he himself has undertaken several visits to Africa. So I think it is a continuing thing in that. Latin America, on the other hand, is a little bit far-flung. He is going to Brazil to attend the BRICS summit, but he's taking that opportunity, making use of that opportunity to visit two most important countries on the Latin American continent. I would say Brazil, Argentina and Mexico. So these two countries that he is visiting are extremely important for us from the standpoint of our bilateral relations. And I think one can only assume that this will contribute a great deal in furthering our relationship, and we will be able to identify very many specific areas where this cooperation can be advanced.
Certainly. So how it's going to build further on the bilateral ties that we enjoy with these countries, how these countries have been strategically and diplomatically chosen for the Prime Minister's longest diplomatic tour in nearly a decade. We'll delve in greater detail in the next round of questions, but let me bring in Professor Dubey into the discussion, get his thoughts first on the significance of this crucial visit. The Prime Minister is undertaking an 8-day visit, Professor. He's embarked on this visit already. And ahead of his departure statement, the Prime Minister did say that this visit provides an opportunity to reinforce India's ties with not just a global South, but at the same time, perhaps add momentum and accelerate our relationship with several countries in Latin America, also in the Caribbean. But to begin with, a lot of these countries, and something that I observed was, have not seen an Indian Prime Ministerial visit in decades. For instance, to Ghana, this is the first visit by an Indian Prime Minister in 30 years. To Trinidad and Tobago, it's the first by an Indian Prime Minister in 25 years. To Argentina, it's the first bilateral visit in 57 years. And to Namibia, it's the first by an Indian Prime Minister in 27 years. So what is the message, and what is the message that you think this important visit of the Prime Minister send, particularly to the countries in the global South and also to the rest of the world?
Yes, as you said, this is something that has been planned very carefully. For the single reason that Prime Minister this time is going for BRICS summit, a summit which signifies alternative global structure of governance, global structure of finance, where the most developed countries are not part of it from the West. And therefore, it's the global South and the countries which are not benefiting from the current structures of the global governance, they are coming together. Therefore, the BRIC visit of Prime Minister, along with these countries which are from the global South, which are going to matter for the alternative structures of global governance, that Prime Minister has decided to take them up. And as Ambassador Gupta said, in this, we have a very strong partnership from African countries and also with Indian diasporic countries, including Trinidad and Tobago, which had been very friendly to India. And therefore, when we are engaging with the BRICS with a definite agenda, visiting these countries and reinforcing ties with Global South, and then reinforcing the BRIC network is going together.
Certainly. So in that aspect, let's also now focus on the regional engagements, the bilateral focus of this visit to these 5 countries. Professor, starting with Ghana, which is the first stop of the Prime Minister, how is India looking to re-energize its ties with West Africa? What opportunities particularly are emerging in areas of trade, investment, capacity building? If you could throw light on that aspect.
Yes, Ghana is very important for India because it's one of the few Anglophone countries in West Africa, which is mostly Francophone countries. It is also a country with which India has a long-term relationship, starting with Kwame and Nkrumah, Nehru, and currently we are also engaged. If you just go to Accra, take a flight from Dubey, Emirates, you will find 70% the passengers are of Indian origin. They are either going for business or they stay in Ghana. We have tremendous potential, very good relationship. It had been an active member of Global South, an active member of non-aligned movement in the past. India-Ghana relations had been extremely good, and it had shown some significant result. Capacity building and human resource development, the two areas where we are focusing in Africa, has been very active in Ghana, and therefore Indian Prime Minister visit to Ghana after a long gap is going to reinforce Indian visits in Africa. What is important for us to understand that out of the 90% trade that India has with Africa, they are confined to just 10 countries. And Ghana is one of those Anglophone countries. And therefore, it is very important to have our economic relation going in this region where there is tremendous potential to extend our cooperation with the neighboring Francophone countries, and also to reach out to those countries where you can see the new alliances like Sahel alliances are emerging. How to reach out to them through Ghana is going to be important.
Right. In fact, the Prime Minister also underlined in his departure statement, Ambassador, that Ghana is a valued partner in the Global South. It plays an important role in the African Union and the economic community of West African states. So how is this visit now going to enhance cooperation in areas of investment, energy, health, security? And you particularly said that our engagement with Africa has increased manifold, especially under Prime Minister Modi's tenure. So how do you look at this visit now adding momentum to the ties that we've seen progress in the last few years?
Well, as Professor Dubey said, Ghana has been a very important, robust member of the African community. Starting from the time of Afro-Asian solidarity, both India and Ghana played a very, very dynamic, very strong role. So I think it is good to, given our traditional relationship with them, to reconnect and to try every possible means to strengthen the relationship. There is a very high degree of acceptance, I would say, of India in the entire Africa, and particularly in Anglophone Africa, where we have greater connectivity. So Ghana is that typical country with whom there is a huge potential for improving the relationship. But I think Prime Minister's delegation and Prime Minister himself will be focusing on many of these areas in the energy sector, in the trade and investment, in technology collaboration, in solar technology area. There are many areas where India has done considerable amount of work, and I'm sure Ghana would also be interested in taking forward. You know, there was a time when the relationship was defined by political connect. And the kind of solidarity that you bring on, and the strength of the voice of the non-aligned movement. Right. Today also we lay a lot of emphasis to the outreach with the Global South, as Prime Minister has said, and but I think increasingly we are also looking at the economic and trade connect. And I think with Ghana we already have a fairly substantial relationship. I think trade is upwards of $3-4 billion, and I'm sure it can be taken forward.
Before we move to the next leg, Trinidad and Tobago, the Prime Minister is also expected to address the Parliament of Ghana. Yes. Now, how rare is that gesture in diplomatic parlance, if we try and understand, how rare and significant is that gesture of a visiting dignitary addressing the Parliament, and especially in context of how India is committed to raise the voice of the Global South, how we have actually brought them to the global table. Do you think it's an outcome of all that kind of solidarity or support that India has extended to Africa in recent years?
It certainly is. I think it's a great honor, not only to Prime Minister Modi, but to India. Yes. And certainly it's not routine for every visiting head of state or government to be provided this opportunity. So I think this is a very special honor that Ghana is extending, and I think it is very illustrative, very reflective of the increasing stature of India and the right spirit in which we have played our part in the global affairs. Starting, if you recall, the G20 summit leadership which Prime Minister Modi conducted here, and the elegance with which that was conducted, we were able to register that we do not belong to any camps. And therefore, we try and work to promote harmony. And we also told the countries that we have to look at alternative ways of promoting harmony. The existing theories of conflict and division of power haven't worked. So I think Prime Minister gave a call for Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam. So I think all of that has gone down very well with the Global South.
Hopefully, there is a lot of potential in building on that kind of relationship as well. So we'll wait and hear from what the MEA has to say after that visit. But coming on to the second leg, which is to Trinidad and Tobago, and since you served as India's High Commissioner to that country, Ambassador, I'll take the question from you. In this country, the Indian diaspora is quite significant. With Trinidad and Tobago, India has a historical connect. But a visit by the Indian Prime Minister, this one, is happening only after 27 years. What are the expectations? What will be high on the agenda when you see the leadership of both countries meeting?
Well, Trinidad is a very special country for us because there are only 5 countries in the world where Indian diaspora is roughly about 50% of the country's population. So I think that makes it very, very special. Trinidad is a very rich country. It's the largest economy in the Caribbean. Before I go any further, I must say Trinidad is also a very important member of CARICOM. CARICOM is about 16, 17 countries. I forget how many exactly, but about 16, 17 countries. Now, at any given point of time, when we are counting our numbers, CARICOM is going to play a very, very important role. So I think we need to pay attention to Caribbean countries, and particularly countries where we have a strong goodwill and a strong people-to-people connect. I think Trinidad and Tobago, apart from Suriname, both these countries, and Guyana, all these 3 countries are part of CARICOM. So we have a very, very special, unique outreach to CARICOM, and I'm sure Prime Minister's visit would not only strengthen the bilateral relations. I'm sure people in Trinidad and Tobago, they are so emotionally attached to India, people of Indian origin, and they would welcome this opportunity with open arms, and I think they would make Prime Minister feel very, very welcome. Our economic connect is not very huge because the country is very far off, but I think it's all in the heart. There is so much of emotional connect with Trinidad and Tobago.
Right. Professor, in that context, since Ambassador mentioned about these countries with significant Indian communities, with sizable population of Indian communities, how do you see the Modi government leveraging cultural diplomacy as a tool of foreign policy?
Cultural diplomacy, especially with countries where you have Indian diaspora in substantial number, also not just a substantial number, where the head of the government currently is of Indian origin. And therefore, the cultural diplomacy of India to connect with the local population through Indian culture becomes very important. In some way, countries like Trinidad and Tobago, they have preserved Indian culture far more than what we have preserved in India. And you will find leaders over there saying that it's time that Trinidad, they start exporting Indian culture to India because they have preserved it far more than what India has done so far. It is in this context that when one finds that Indian Prime Minister goes there, it's a big deal for people of Indian origin. We have Indian cultural centers over there. As the Ambassador Virendra Gupta said, Trinidad is among the few countries which had looked towards India from very beginning because of the distance and the policies of the Congress government under Nehru to dissociate with diaspora, that some of these far-off countries could not get as much attention as they deserve, as they wanted. So Prime Minister visiting this Caribbean country with substantial Indian diaspora, with Indian head of state, elected head of a state, is a big thing in terms of promoting India through cultural connect.
Right. Ambassador, coming on now to Argentina, because that's going to be the first stop, and that's also quite interesting because what we see is that this is the first bilateral visit to this Latin American country by an Indian Prime Minister in 57 years. So what does this mean for India, India's ties particularly with Latin America's third largest economy, and now especially under the new leadership there, the Prime Minister will have engagements with the new President. What do you think, what are the issues that both of them will discuss? Are there newer avenues of partnership that India and Argentina can explore together?
Well, certainly being the third largest economy in Latin America and a large country, also our co-partner in G20, I think Argentina's significance is fairly obvious. So it is, I would say, an oddity, ironical that we did not undertake any visit to Argentina so far.
Right.
So I think Prime Minister's visit will correct, first of all, that anomaly, show the right intent on our part to take forward this relationship. Being a large economy, there is obviously a huge potential. And you know, there are rivalries within the Latin American continent, and I think it also sometimes an impression gets created that we are only mollycoddling with Brazil, given our partnership in IPSA and BRICS. But I think this is an opportunity for us to register that we are open equally to every country. There is a huge amount of bilateral spread that can be worked upon, which hasn't really been developed. I mean, if Argentina being such a large country, our trade is comparatively small, I think roughly reaching about 5 billion or so, but it can be taken forward, it can be taken upwards. We have energy interests, ONGC Videsh is active there. Not just in the oil sector, but also in the renewable energy sector. There is a lot which can be done. So I think it's an opportunity. Look, India is trying to diversify its options. We have our traditional partners, both politically and economically, and I think Prime Minister seems very intent on reaching out to new partners. So I think this is what this visit signifies.
And you know, since this visit of the Prime Minister covers both Argentina and Brazil, both countries where the Prime Minister will be stopping over, Professor, what's your understanding? Do you think it's a potential opportunity for India now to develop a Latin American strategy as it deepens beyond trade into technology, space, and also energy cooperation? Because as Ambassador rightly said, we are trying to diversify our relationship with countries, particularly in the global south.
Yes, this will reinforce India's ties with the important country of global south. As Ambassador Virendra Gupta pointed out, we had not been focusing on Argentina as much as it was needed. Our focus was largely because of the various historical regions, IPSA, BRICS, only with Brazil. And it appeared that we are not focusing adequately on Argentina. These days, the diplomatic move and political outreach leads to economic connect as well. And therefore, this will not just reinforce the global south that we are trying to connect more strongly now, but also start more economic connect with a country with which we are not connected so much politically as was required.
Coming now, you know, despite me trying to cover every aspect of the Prime Minister's visit, we've already spoken for about 24 minutes. We are yet to cover and get your opinions on BRICS and Namibia. So let me very quickly touch upon the BRICS aspect, Ambassador, from you first. How crucial is the BRICS 2025 summit in Brazil for India's multilateral agenda, especially amid global power realignments that we are seeing, and the expansion of the group per se? It's sort of...
BRICS is important for us. We have been a founding member, and we always looked upon it as an alternative forum to voice our opinion and to network, to connect with countries of the global south primarily. I think the world is a very confusing place, and it's ever dynamic. At a point of time when we were very actively pursuing the idea of BRICS, our relationship with America was still in the developmental phase. We were progressing our relationship, but we weren't there. At that time, we couldn't say that we have a strategic connect with America, which we have now. So, BRICS was developed not to oppose the Western nations, but certainly as a counterpoise, right, as an alternative opinion to the West. China is there, but in the last so many years after the BRICS evolution or initiation, our relationship with America has become far closer. We have a strategic connect with America, and China, which is a partner in the BRICS, has become somewhat adversarial. Yes. So this has totally changed the dynamics. We no longer look upon BRICS as a counterpoise to the Western, because we don't need that kind of thing. Right. We are given space in the Western forums. Prime Minister recently attended the G7 summit as observer, which we've been doing for the last 5-6 years. And India has very good relations with each one of the G7 countries. If I were to tell you that with not only America, but France, with Britain, with Germany, with all these countries. So I think collectively it is natural that we have a good relationship with Western countries. But I think what the confusion also teaches us is that you can never be sure about anything in the global affairs. So you got to keep your options open. And I think from that perspective, our continued involvement and focus on the BRICS is extremely important part of our management of global relations.
Absolutely, and I think given the context in the wake of the global uncertainties, very quickly, Professor, I'll take your perspective on the expectations from BRICS 2025, and particularly, do you think, given the uncertainty, the volatility, it does present before India an opportunity to shape BRICS agenda? Because in the wake of an expanded BRICS, there is, of course, that multilateral agenda, in India's agenda that it aligns with. But at the same time, it does present India with that opportunity to drive through its own agendas and perhaps build the narrative?
Yes, I think the BRICS does that, what you said, but BRICS also does what is very important for us to understand, that we might have developed a closer relationship with the West, with the United States currently. But the country's intention changes. The structure don't change, then you are in trouble. The global structure of finance management, the global financial governance is something that is still problematic for India. We still cannot buy from the country where US imposes sanction, where the SWIFT is blocked. Now, this is matter of intention, but the structure is not matter of intention. And therefore, the BRICS works for a structure where alternative options are available for global South countries, including for countries like India. It does not mean that we are not having good relations with the West, but we are trying to have alternative where we have issues in the global financial governance and also strategic management. Besides that, as you said, this is a fluid situation, India is an important country, as a founding country. When other countries are joining, it has an important role to play, that BRICS remains not just confined to one dominant country, but other countries also get equal representation, which are much more neutral and focused towards the BRICS goal, rather than try to perpetuate hegemony within the BRICS itself.
Professor, I'll also take one question on Namibia, because that's the final leg of the Prime Minister's longest diplomatic tour in the last 10 years. So with Namibia, how would you explain our strategic and environmental dimensions of this visit? And I ask you this because there's been a recent cooperation on wildlife conservation, also a partnership on uranium. So how do you see us now building on that relationship, and this a crucial visit of the Prime Minister that comes in after 25 years, how do you see it adding to that dimension?
I think it is helping a great deal simply because the initial freedom fighters and the political formation like SWAPO, they opened their office in India when they were not allowed in Namibia. They walked from here. We had tremendous political goodwill in Namibia. It has many critical minerals which we need. And we had not been able to translate our political goodwill into trade and economic engagement. So Prime Minister visit over there will add to all that. Our focus had remained South Africa. Now it will also move to Namibia, which is important from critical minerals point of view. And we have very good political relationship with them.
Ambassador, one last question from you, and this is because India has time and again been pushing for a permanent seat at the UNSC and increased trade engagement as well. How crucial are these African nations that the Prime Minister will be stopping over to, engaging with the top leadership in not just as diplomatic allies, but also allies at multilateral fora where it counts, where we want these countries to stand firmly behind India and support us?
Well, when and if the question of permanent membership comes, I'm personally very skeptical, but if it comes, the numbers will be in the reckoning. And we count large numbers in Africa and Latin America, particularly CARICOM, I mentioned Caribbean countries.
Yes.
So I think we'll have to pay attention to these countries. From that perspective alone, I mean, quite apart from our traditional construct, what we said is that we want to build on the our connect with Africa, convert that into economic opportunities, not just for us, but for them as well.
Absolutely.
You know, India doesn't pursue economic interest only for its own gains, because that can never be lasting. You have to promote mutual interest. Enduring interest will develop only if the other party, if the other country sees in any activity that we undertake and a mutual interest. So I think we have to pay attention. I don't think we ought to be obsessed with the permanent membership of the Security Council. The reason being that it's going to be very difficult. There are important countries in the world, including China, which you would be aware, who will not let that happen,
India at the table.
who just frustrate us at every point in time. So I think what we say is that whatever is not going to happen, let's forget about it, let's not remain obsessed about it and focus on other things which are far more important.
Okay. So with that, we'll have to wrap up the conversation because we've already bypassed our time, and it's an important visit. It's the as I've been reiterating, it's the longest diplomatic tour being undertaken by the Prime Minister in the last 10 years. But the most important message here is that India is deepening its roots in the global south while reaching out to new partners as well across continents. A big thank you to Ambassador Gupta and Professor Dubey for joining us with their perspectives and insights, and thank you very much to you viewers as well for your time.
Thank you.